All right, good morning. Since we are just starting off a break, let's try to bring the focus in the room. So I'm going to have you all start with taking 2 deep breaths. All right, thank you. So this was a packed room. I had a different idea, but since I was once told, if you're able to move the audience, it's a great speech. So this was my alternate way to move you. But good morning. As Rebecca mentioned, Bimal Mehta. I'm part of the Schneider Electric Innovation team, and this topic is kind of broad enough that I could go on for hours, but I was told to limit my talk to 15 minutes with some Q&A. As Rebecca mentioned, as Schneider Electric, and in particular my role, we're not only working with startups to invest, but we also look at startups to partner with for our businesses. And as we kind of go through our digital transformation journey, we are both a consumer of technology. We kind of deploy it at our own sites, as well as we look at opportunities to kind of extend and complement our product offering for our customers. So hopefully I'll try to cover different aspects of it as part of this talk to kind of give you a flavor of the different things we are doing and why we are doing. So first of all, Schneider Electric Innovation, and internally we kind of call it innovation at the edge. The reason for that is we formed this group to really complement our R&D innovation and kind of do it at the edge of the core of the business, so that we let the core of the business focus on their day-to-day P&L and operations and execute on what they are supposed to do for the short term. Whereas we, on the edge, kind of look at innovation both inside and outside of the organization. When I say inside, we have a business incubation team where we look at ideas coming from within, which are big enough ideas, and we form a business venture or incubate that idea and kind of see if it is worth funding it and let it run like a startup on its own, again, being held at the edge of Schneider Electric. We launched 3 startups last year and 3 this year, which are in the way, and actually in a few weeks they're going to present to the board to kind of see if that idea goes further or not. By external innovation, obviously we work with startups from the outside, and for that, Schneider Electric, at Schneider Electric, the way we have set up is slightly different than most corporate venture funds. We do have a traditional corporate venture investment team. In addition to that, besides the direct investment, we also kind of invest in other venture capital funds, which are closely aligned with with Schneider Electric's interests. And the other differentiator, which kind of helps accelerate our innovation program, is what we call is the startup partnership group within Schneider Electric. And you kind of think of that as the like how Rebecca mentioned, she's the matchmaker between the MIT startups and the corporates. We are kind of the matchmaker between our investment team, our lines of businesses, and the startups. So we kind of help evaluate what problems the business wants to solve and what startups are there outside of Schneider Electric which would fit that bill, or the venture team working directly with startups, we kind of evaluate where and which line of business it might fit within the organization. So we help connect the startup and find the right sponsor, if you will, within the line of business. As you may or may not know, Schneider Electric is over 160,000 employees. And so to kind of finding that needle in the haystack could take you a few days, to put it mildly. So we kind of help accelerate that process. So that's a little bit about our Schneider Electric Innovation at the Edge program. And I was told to kind of talk about 3 takeaways, challenges, or opportunities which we've learned and what we are looking at as part of Schneider Electric. So first is it's about the proof of scale. It's no longer like proof of concept, right? And I think the last decade we used to kind of call in meetings, it was like death by PowerPoint, and now it's like death by POC, right? Where now the focus has changed from how do you evaluate opportunities to create solutions which are ready to deploy, both from a hardware and software stack perspective, and require minimal customization. One of the use case from our customers, where it's from one of our large utility customers, which started on this journey almost 8+ years ago to do a fleet-wide monitoring program. And they've kind of shown to the industry of how it's done. They've kind of gone beyond the proof of concept to a proof of scale for this industry, improving IoT, big data, and AI. They kind of have been able to prove the business case and also demonstrated how to monitor 40,000 megawatt of power generation with only 5 people within the company. It's taken them a while, but they've been able to scale it in terms of from the number of sensors to the historians to the number of models. As you can see, now they are at a steady state. They show their other utilities within the industry in terms of how it's done. And now the other utilities want to do it within 2-3 years. So this is kind of like how you can really talk about proof of scale. So you want to kind of have solutions which can scale faster throughout your enterprise versus kind of in a unit way test it out and it fails when you kind of try to scale further. Second one, from a customer perspective or a corporate perspective, how do you kind of future-proof your digital architecture? How do you ensure that it can stay for the next 10 years? And one of the examples or one of the things to consider is how do you enable distributed processing throughout your solution stack? You kind of evaluate analytics across your different, whether it's at the edge, whether it's streaming, or at the cloud, and also within the organization silos. You probably all know, and I don't want to bore you the numbers in terms of which Gartner puts out in terms of number of connected devices within the industrial world, or the cost of cloud and edge computing kind of becoming cheaper by the day. But what that has given rise to is that where to process and store data, that pendulum is swinging between highly centralized cloud services to more of a decentralized edge approach. And when do you use one versus the other? Like from our perspective, both cloud and edge is going to continue to exist or coexist rather. Where you use edge or distributed or decentralized approach is best addressed when you have connectivity or latency challenges, you have bandwidth constraints, or you want to kind of address both processing at the edge. One of the examples, like one of the startups we are working with within upstream oil and gas is because of, it's more to do with well pump controls, and what they have come up with is their own hardware sensor, which is right at the edge of the, near the, where the well pumps are. It's kind of collecting the data. It has pre-built models, or kind of the models have been pushed down to the edge, and they are able to control the well pump, whether it's about methane gas emissions, etc. So whereby now they are limiting the whole data set, kind of going all the way from the well back to the central control room, and the operator is taking decisions. And one of the things that we've noticed is the way to kind of deploy such solutions where you have operators concerned about their job security, etc. We've kind of gone in a step approach where we've kind of worked with the operators, kind of shown how the models work, and kind of see what actions they used to take before, and now what action is the model telling you to take, and it gets verified and validated. And The efficiency which the customer got in this case is that earlier the operator used to take maybe 2 actions to control the process in a day. Now with this model, the model is able to control right at the edge like more than 15 times a day. So in terms of process efficiency, really kind of delivering process optimization in terms of reducing methane gas emissions is huge benefit to the customer. And now the operator can focus on where best to approach, where best to focus his or her efforts from a process perspective or from an asset perspective. From a cloud perspective, as I said, cloud services will continue to coexist, and in cases where there are highly decentralized edge devices, cloud will also play a role in kind of managing and operating that distributed edge environment. The last point or key takeaway is there is no one size fits all. Even from a Schneider Electric perspective, yes, we have a platform, but we cater to many different industries, many different segments, and we realize that it's an ecosystem play, but the partners we kind of work with have to kind of create value. It's not about the technology, but it's about creating value. And it's in some cases like one of the things we kind of talk about or tell our startup partners is that you have to be able to rise above the noise, in the sense that truly creating value where it makes sense, right? Again, I'll just go to, yeah. So in a control environment or where you have all the way from sensors to sense and respond, there are various opportunities where the startup can play and add value, whether it's at the sensor level to ensure there is integrity of the data, connectivity, and whether you're kind of playing the next level up in the stack, whether you get an alert, whether the alert has the right amount of context to take the right action, and when the action is taken, did the right action kind of get controlled, did it get lost in the noise, or did somebody, because of time not given the right information, and whether the right action was taken, and once the action was taken, did somebody put that information in that knowledge database to kind of ensure that learning is happening throughout that closed loop cycle, if you will. So in short, the point I want to take you to take away from this is that there are a lot of different players who can add value within that ecosystem of IoT, and whether we call it IoT at the cloud or at the edge. And we kind of look at startup partners which kind of provide specific value to our customers. This is my last slide. So in terms of how do we help startups, and maybe this is a kind of point for other corporates to kind of think about, like how do we work with startups who we are either partnering with or investing in, and the value we add or the benefit the startups in this case get is not only from an external perspective but from an internal perspective as well. From an external perspective, what I mean is our large customer install base, like access to the customer, but also because we have a platform like our EcoStruxure platform, it's kind of part of an integrated vision. We kind of ensure that whoever we are partnering with fits within our integrated vision for the end user. From an internal perspective, and I know Mike Phillips is going to talk about Sense's journey and how we at Schneider are working together. But before we even partner or invest with startups, we kind of do our internal validation. We have an innovation lab as well as have the ability to test, validate the technology. We have our internal domain experts who can provide more additional context or subject matter experts to kind of help the startup kind of focus in the right way to kind of generate value. And I think one of the earlier speakers talked about cybersecurity. From a Schneider Electric perspective, for us, it's always security first. So, and we have a large number of cybersecurity architects who can help and guide you or guide the startup in a way which would make sense for the end user. So that's about it from my perspective. Any questions?
I can start with a few questions. Maybe folks can add. So you showed us that picture, like getting information, being aware there's a problem, trying to make decisions, and so forth. And I think some of the startups we featured earlier sort of plug into that, right?
Yeah.
Both from the sensor, the self-power sensor being placed out there, to AI and machine learning to help you make that decision. For folks from corporates looking at the startups, and for startups, trying to figure out the problems here. Can you talk about, what are the interesting areas where you think there's still things that's lacking that startups could address, or corporates should start thinking about better finding solutions for?
Sure. So I'll give you a couple of examples, right? Like, so one is in the industrial automation world, like we don't have that many data scientists, right? Like everybody wants to go work for the next Facebook or Google or the next AI company coming out there. So, I think if there are startups who are able to alleviate that issue in terms of take the onus away from the industrial automation, like understand the domain, create the models which fit that particular industry or vertical, then you're just kind of going in and talking to the customer to add value in terms of here's how you can save, whether it's process efficiency or asset efficiency, things like that, right? So like the previous example I gave about the upstream oil and gas, they've created the model, understanding the domain expertise, created the models, and then now they've found the right industry to kind of go and target the customers. We are working with another machine learning, predictive analytics player or a startup, which is more industry agnostic, but they have created a model library which kind of fit within the OT world, right? But it's more which can be done and be leveraged by Schneider Electric or our end users in a way that an operator or an engineer can kind of do that, kind of bring in the models so that you don't need a factory of data scientists to kind of help the customer. So that's one. The other interesting areas we're always looking at, obviously technology sometimes becomes a driver to initiate the conversation, but then it boils down to like, let's take the example of video analytics. People are saying like, oh, you just put in this camera, we kind of evaluate, but when you try to scale it beyond that one side, can it really replace the number of sensors are you talking? Can it work in different lighting conditions, different environment conditions? So we are looking at video analytics to kind of see, is it ready yet to be at that scale, which can work in not just discrete environments, but process environments as well, to help kind of reduce the number of sensors out there and kind of have, AI or analytics put in place at the edge to kind of help with process or asset efficiency.
Great. Question?
Yeah.
Insurance company, we're very, you see the industry 4.0 changing.
Yeah.
Our clients' environments, right? So would you guys be able, through partnerships, to also assist? Because we're very interested in figuring out if there's any more threats being posed by implementing this stuff, or if there's any opportunities, particularly from a loss prevention perspective. We're not necessarily the people that install the sensors.
Yeah.
Always have direct access to the data, but we want some oversight, some standards. What are your recommendations for someone like me that really wants to know how this is going to affect our clients?
I just want to make sure I understood your question, but and if I've not answered your question, maybe we'll take this offline. Like just from a reinsurance perspective, like one of the new business models which I've seen kind of coming out is equipment as a service, right? Like, so rather than the end user owning that pump or whatever, now Munich Re has invested in a startup which is now monitoring the vibration and the health of the asset, and now they are insuring it to kind of ensure, like from a warranty perspective or whatever the case might be. So So there are opportunities coming out in terms of new business models. So sometimes it's, and that's one of the areas we kind of constantly look at, like, whether it might be the same technology, but are there new business models kind of coming out? And I think you mentioned earlier as a service, right? So this is kind of a additional model to kind of look at whether, let the customers focus on, if it's a food F&B manufacturer, like let them just focus on the IP and how to, and let somebody else worry about the equipment type of thing. So.